Hey y'all, hey, what's up? It's your girl Neftara Grace welcoming you back to another episode of the Sacred and Profane podcast. Wow, you guys, it's been a while since I last recorded a podcast episode for you all. Let me see, like, for real, like has it been that long? It's been a long time. So that means what I've got to do is I have to start at the top with the disclaimers. This podcast episode and every episode of the Sacred and Profane podcast is expressly and explicitly content for a mature audience only. What does that mean? First of all, you have to be 18 years old or older, and you have to be emotionally mature enough to be in this dialogue with us. Okay? Unlike other podcasts, this podcast was intentionally and is deliciously crafted to activate you, to trigger you, if you will, into doing shadow work. So again, to be responsible, you've got to be 18 years old or older, and you have to be emotionally mature enough to be activated and then to go do the shadow work. Okay, if you are neither of those things, please stop listening now. Thank you so much. Okay, for the rest of you that are still here rocking and rolling, I've got the stage going. I'm not in my usual setup, so I don't have the sound bowl or anything like that. But I will pull a few cards for us. But I feel like the flow of this episode is going to be a little bit different. I don't have a special guest for you guys lined up. But if you know of someone that you think would be a really good fit for this audience, please put them in touch with me. You know how to find me on the website. You know my email address at this point. I'm findable. You can find me, okay? But we're going to talk about a few things. I've been promising you guys a podcast episode around emotional stability. So we're going to jump into that. We're going to revisit discernment. Okay. And this podcast is coming at you uh, at post ceremony. So today is a Thursday, and I just had ceremony on this Sunday past, which is also the solstice. Um, we are in the grips of a full moon coming up here in a few days. So that is happening energetically right now. We're in Mercury moves retrograde in a few days as well. So that's happening right now. There's a lot of happening celestially right now, and I think that's why this podcast episode is coming through. You know, one of the challenges of being an oracle or a prophetess or a mouthpiece of the divine, a mouthpiece of the Most High, is I only speak when the divine tells me to speak. So if the divine doesn't tell me to speak, I don't say anything. Now this is wild because I've been on this path over 20 years, so I have a lot of content. As a matter of fact, this podcast is going to be moved from the public platform it's been on. It's going to move to my private Patreon membership. I have a lot of content. I've had content for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. Okay. But now we're at a pivotal time in humanity's evolution where discernment is so key. It's just so key. Is so key. And the main channels, the main platforms are being flooded with false light and false information. And so rather than try to compete or try to vie for your attention in a very noisy and very crowded and very overstimulated social media space and marketplace, I'm going to just let you know you're going to find almost all of my stuff on Patreon. That's just where it's going to be. Okay. There's less noise. There's less chatter there. You come into the space. It's sacred. You recognize you're in the temple. It's beautiful. And there's so much for you to explore inside the Patreon. So I'm going to go ahead and move this podcast over there as well. For those of you who really love encountering this type of work on a public platform, you can find me on YouTube. Okay. I'm on YouTube, the Shadow Queen 144. That's my handle, Neftara Grace. You'll know it when you're there. And I read tarot. A lot of times I'm channeling and the cards are just there. So those of you who enjoy uh, psychicism and mediumship, there it is. It's all in my tarot readings. And it's also, throughout my work. But back to what I was saying, when you speak for the Most High, you really, you wait until there's something to say. And so in my personal life, some people find this really wild, because I have so much content and because when I open my mouth, there's so much that comes out of esoteric teachings. People think that, to be around me is to be, around someone who's constantly spouting wisdom. It's really not. It's really not. although I do have a lot of wisdom to share. I'm actually very quiet in my personal life. Um, and as you can imagine, when I do turn up, I turn all the way up. Okay. I work hard and I play harder. But I want to go back to what I just shared, and that is, I've noticed as the medium, right, as the channel, that the divine has taken significant pauses in the messages they're putting out to us. Now, I'm not going to speak to other mediums and channels because that's not my business, not yet anyway. But I will say my own experience has been the divine will give me a message to relate to you guys and then we'll rest. Like, let's see what they do with that. Let's see if they take that on. Let's see if they do that work. And if and I've noticed how the messages come in. Like if I get a bunch of messages back to back for you guys are getting information, you're doing the work. It's very clear to me. Just like it's very clear to me if the divine is putting out messages through me, but no one's picking up what I'm laying down, that channel will go kind of quiet. So I have several conversations, several dialogues with the divine going on at any given time, but the public access channel will go quiet. The divine won't tell me anything for everybody until everybody's doing the last bit of work that the divine gave. Okay. So my messages are for a very select part of the spiritual collective. Not everybody that's air quote woke is going to find my content and resonate with it. It's not going to happen. One, I'm bringing you messages from such a high vibrational frequency, and I'm bringing them to you from such an ascended timeline. Okay. So again, for some of you who are like, oh my gosh, you're diehard fans, you're like, yes, every word resonate, love it. And you try to share me with someone and they're like, yeah, I don't get it. It's okay. It's really okay. Um, this is something I settled with fairly early on in my career because I got, I'm a healer for healers. I heal healers so healers can go back out and heal the world. Okay. That means my audience is pretty niche. My audience is pretty niche. Okay. Now there's a double-edged sword to what I do because I heal healers. I also attract a lot of people who are not healers but wish they were. Right? So it's kind of like on a soul level, they think if they get close enough to me, I'll vet them as a healer, and all of a sudden they'll be a healer. No, they're just not. So I end up exposing a lot of false light as well, and that's why I bring to you guys, every now and then that gentle reminder to please use your discernment. There's a lot of people cosplaying being a healer right now. There's a lot of people pretending. I love who my boy however Kama calls them pretendians. A lot of people pretending to be something and someone they're not. Part of that is they don't know who they are. They really truly don't. They really truly don't. Okay. And in another episode, we'll go over how can you know who you are? How can you know who you are? Because I would ask you to consider that 90% of the people, and y'all know I'm being generous. Y'all know how much I trust. But it's probably close to like 97, 98% of the people on the planet have no clue who they are. None at all. None at all. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about emotional maturity because I've been promised you this conversation and it matters so much, especially when we talk about knowing who we are. Okay. And listen, one of the reasons you have to know who you are, especially right now, is because there are things that are happening beyond your control and without your permission and beyond your grasp, like really beyond your grasp. There's just things happening right now. You got to get that. That's like so outside of your wheelhouse that if we were to talk about it, you'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. You don't. You know what I'm talking about, but it's still happening. Okay. So for example, there's somewhere right now in the world, a calculus professor is explaining calculus to somebody and, like only 2% of the people in the world understand what the hell that man is saying. I'm telling you right now, that's happening. It's happening somewhere in the world, in a classroom near you. Okay. So you just want to accept that there are things happening right now in the world that you do not comprehend. And it's not because you're dumb. It's just because you don't know that thing. Can we go there? Okay. Okay. Okay, good. This is like that. This is like that. So you were intentionally taught nothing about emotional maturity. You see how I did that? See how I did that? So Of course, you don't know anything about it. You were anything there is to know about emotional maturity was intentionally withheld from you, right? Let's go back to the college professor teaching calculus. If you don't need calculus, nobody taught it to you, right? Right. Like you didn't, right? And they calculus is one of those things that they determine pretty early on if you're going to need it or not, don't they? Yeah. I mean, by like 10th grade, they know if you're going to learn calculus or not. That they start, they've got you sorted out by then. If you're the type of person who's going to grow up to be the type of person who might one day possibly for some God knows whatever reason use calculus, they know that pretty early on. So they don't teach it to just everybody. You with me? No. Because if you're never going to use it, why would they do that? They don't do that. They don't do that. Okay. Unfortunately, emotional maturity is something that we do all need, but none of us were taught. Okay. So this is a really sticky situation that we find ourselves in. So, okay, to take it from the top, some of you are like, well, Ness, what the hell is emotional maturity? Right? That's how far removed you are from what this is. Now, emotional maturity is really, really great. Um, we can talk about it and we're going to talk about it, but I'm going to invite you to also experience it in in your everyday life. Okay. But emotional maturity is this place of being. So being, got to go to your being. It's not something you're going to do. Okay. Emotional maturity is a place of being where you are authentically who you are emotionally. Now, I got to tell you, emotional maturity takes a lot of balls. Takes a lot of balls. Why? Because, and then we're going to talk about some practical ways to actually, mature yourself emotionally too. Where it's not just going to be phenomenon theory here. Okay. So, one, we're all capable of it. We just aren't taught what it is. We're taught something different instead. And so there are people who think they're mature and they're not. Okay. So a couple things about emotional maturity, what it's not, and we'll talk about what it is, and we'll talk about cultivating some, okay? This is probably going to be a longer episode. So again, I've got a cup of hot water. I'm sitting here rolling up some Blue Lotus. You guys know the drill. Do what you got to do. Settle in. Let's chat. Let's chop it up. Okay, so emotional maturity is not an intelligence. Okay, so that we're not talking about something that makes you smart or means that you know something someone else doesn't know. You learned a technique. There's no technique that you're going to learn for no, that's not what this is. The other thing, again, this is a place of being. So this is not something that you're going to do. You're not going to go do emotional maturity. You're not going to learn emotional maturity. You're going to allow yourself to mature, and then you're going to accept that maturity. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You're going to allow yourself to mature and you're going to accept that maturity. It is a place of being. It is not an action that you take. It is not a belief system that you organize yourself around. This isn't, oh, I believe in emotional maturity. Do you? Nope, that's not it. Okay. You want to consider that everything is meant to mature. Grapes, cheese, your body, your hormones, your skin, your hair, your thoughts, your values, and yes, your emotions. Absolutely, your emotions. Now, some people, because of all the things that have been happening in the world and everything they've experienced, some people have completely shut themselves down emotionally. They've shut down their heart chakra and they say that this is mature. As a matter of fact, this is what, especially here in the West, and I cannot speak for other countries, in the United States of America, we have convinced ourselves and unfortunately our children that maturity means having a closed and shut down heart chakra. Okay. So again, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being the bigger person. I'm not talking about turning the other cheek. Okay. I'm not even talking about the golden rule. Okay. So now let's get into what emotional maturity is, some examples of it, and then some practical ways to begin to cultivate this in your life as a lifestyle, as a practice, as a place of being where you can go and experience yourself in this space until you choose for yourself, hey, you know what? I'm always gonna be here. I'm always gonna be emotionally mature. I'm not going back to the old way of doing things. Okay. All right. So one of the first things we want to dig into as we begin to talk about like what it is, because we talk about what it's not. So now let's talk about, okay, what is emotional maturity? So first of all, I want you to understand that hardly anybody is practicing this. So again, I'm giving you this kind of preface here so you don't start judging yourself like, oh my God, I should have known. No, sweetheart. You were born to parents who are emotionally mature. You went to school with teachers who are emotionally mature. You dated and married emotionally immature people. The country is being ran by people who are emotionally immature, baby. You were never, I mean, come on. So cut yourself some slack, okay? All right. Emotional maturity is your ability to respond to whatever situation is in front of you with the appropriate emotional response. Yeah. Uh-huh. Emotional maturity is your ability to respond to the situation in front of you with the appropriate emotional response. Let's chop that up. The ability to respond is a fancy of saying responsibility. So emotional maturity is a recognition of your responsibility emotionally in any given situation. Okay? Some situations in life require an emotional response from you. Some of them do not. You have to learn the difference. You have to learn the difference. And then you have to learn which emotion is the appropriate response for the situation in front of you. You with me? This is emotional maturity. It is a place of being. Remember, not something you're going to do. It's not a checklist you're going to check off. It's a place of being. And the reason it's a place of being is because to accomplish what I just said to you, right? The ability to respond to any given situation in front of you with the appropriate response, you have to be present. 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 You're not going to be able to experience, let alone express the appropriate emotion to any given situation at any given time if you're not present. If you're not present, okay? That's one of the main reasons many people are not practicing this. And why it's so easy for me to go, yeah, no, you're not. Like 2% of you are. I can, and that's being generous. I can say that because one of the prerequisites for emotional maturity is being present. Now, here's the cool thing about emotional maturity. Once you take on becoming emotionally mature, emotional stability is not far behind. The two go hand in hand. Okay. The two just go hand in hand. So for those of you who are thinking of that person in your life, because some of you have been here in this conversation the whole time, like, oh my God, she's talking about Dan, she's talking about Mike, she's talking about Earl, right? Like she's talking about everybody but you, right? You guys know how that can be. But really, really, for real, for truly, for really, for real, for true, for really, really, okay? Um, we all know somebody who is so emotionally immature, it just ruins the mood. You guys know what I'm talking about. You're just like, oh my God, this person overreacts to everything, or this person never has a response. And listen, I want you to get this goes both ways. It's both the person who cries over every little thing all the time, no matter what, and it's the person who, no matter what, is always cynical. Okay? It's the person who laughs at everything. These are all people who are emotionally immature, whether they're always crying, whether they're always laughing, or whether they're always cynical and sarcastic. These are all symptoms of someone who's emotionally immature. How can I say that? Well, especially because, especially in Western culture, we love to pretend that if you're sarcastic, that means you're mature. It does not. Sarcasm is one of the clearest signs of emotional uncomfortability that there can be. Okay. So I may have said that word improperly. Emotion. What did I say? Anyway, y'all know what I'm talking about. So it's not, um, and we watch our teens do this, as our teens are trying to mature and grow up and seem older and seem more grown, they get super sarcastic, right? They get super cynical. And as parents, we're like, oh my God, why are they being so sarcastic? Well, that's what we've shown them maturity is. That's what we've shown them. We've shown our kids that, oh, maturity means deadpan, cynicism, sarcasm. Now you're mature, right? But in truth, emotional maturity is the ability to experience and express the appropriate emotion for any given situation in front of you, whether it's laughter, tears, anger, sarcasm, regret, remorse, grief. It's emotional maturity, it's emotional expression, the ability to respond with the appropriate emotion. That means you've got to have all the emotions available to you. If you only have five emotions available to you, you're not very emotionally mature. If you have one emotion available to you, you're not emotionally mature. You want to have the full range. Y'all know how CBD works, the full spectrum. You need the full spectrum of your emotions to even be considered emotionally mature. If you do not, if you cannot, if you do not, if you cannot handle the full spectrum of your emotions, how on earth could you be considered to be mature with them? That is, how on earth could we consider that you have any facility with your emotions if you can't express them, if you don't have access to them? You with me? Okay. So, couple things about this because right away there's defense and resistance in the air as I talked about all of your emotions being expressed. I mean, nobody, I mean, this is where people, no, I can't, you don't understand. Oh my God, oh my God. Okay, you're being emotional. That is what has taken us out. That phrase, you're being emotional. Stop being emotional. You're so emotional. This has become one of the ways that um, society and the forces that govern the matrix, because they're not really powers, they are forces that have supplanted the powers, but that's the conversation for another day. Um, I was just talking about how if you don't have access to your emotions, how could you be considered mature? Let's go back to that for just a moment because I want you to really get what I'm saying here. When someone has experience with something, explicit, extensive experience, we know that that person is mature in that area. So practicing medicine, playing the flute, gardening, hypnotherapy. It doesn't matter what it is. The more experience someone has, we say, okay, that person knows what they're doing. They've matured. If they were an educator, they would have tenure. Okay, I'm putting you in the world of what it is to be emotionally mature. We're talking about having experience, a depth of experience with your emotions. A number of people that I've spoken to are similar to myself in that from the time they were little, they had access to one emotion, and that was anger. And I've talked to a number of people who felt like they had access to no emotion from childhood. Emotional maturity is no matter where you start on the board, allowing yourself to learn your different emotions, to learn how you express them, and then learn how to wield them effectively, how to learn from them, how to work with them, and then how to respond with the appropriate emotion in any given situation that's in front of you. It took me years to become emotionally mature. Years. Now, that I consider myself emotionally mature, and I do so not in a vacuum. Um, and I've gotten a decent amount of feedback about this from others who've been around me for any length of time. They note my responses, they note how I respond to everything, from crisis to children to adults. You know, they go, hey, you kind of have this way of just being, right? That's what I'm talking about. Most people are unsettled by emotional maturity because it's so rare. It's rare because it requires presence. Okay. So again, we're talking about allowing yourself to experience all of your emotions, the depth of all of your emotions, such that you recognize your emotions when they arise and you cultivate your ability to respond to your emotional self as well as to the world around you as your emotional self arises. This is the work of grown-ups. This is grown folk business. This is not the silent treatment. Emotional maturity is allowing yourself to experience all of your emotions at such a depth that you can recognize your own emotions. Again, 90% of you don't know what you're feeling on any given day. You have no clue what you're feeling. 90% of humans on this planet live in a chaotic world where they don't know what they're feeling from any given moment. They don't know. Think about this. How do you feel right now? What are you feeling right now? Take a moment. Look. What emotions are present? And emotions, emotion, energy in motion. What emotions are present for you right now? And if you don't know what emotions are, take it all the way back. Go Google feelings wheel, the feelings wheel, and download yourself a JPEG of the feelings wheel and get to know all the emotions that are on that wheel. And then see if you can locate one of them in your body at any given time on any given day. This is how we start. You know anger, you know happiness, you know sadness. What else do you know? And how well do you know it? And how deep have you allowed yourself to experience it? Most of you were taught like I was. A woman of color being born in the South, I was taught only happiness and joy were allowed. No matter what's happening, you have to be happy and joyful. And as a girl, I could never ever be angry. Okay, girls don't get angry. That's for boys. That's the type of hoo-ha that I grew up with. What about you? I was in my early 30s before I sat myself down and allowed myself to experience all of my emotions. My early 30s. These health tragedies that I suffered through and endured because I did not understand how to allow energy to move through my body. Whenever I'd have an emotion, I would try to find it and grab it and wrestle it down and pin it down and suppress it. And my body suffered because of it. Suffered. We're all born into this world with an emotional imprint, whatever that major emotion of our mother's womb was at the time of our birth. Okay. That's the water we're born into. And that'll be our predominant emotion that we try to get our way out of as we move through life. But newsflash, you can't really get out of that predominant emotion until you tag all the other emotions in because they want to exist in a balance. Have you guys seen Inside Out? My kids, Inside Out 2, we've seen all, but there's something there. All the emotions have to have a chance at the dashboard. They have to. If you haven't seen Inside Out 2, this is such a great, like, so great. Go watch Inside Out 2. All the emotions have to have a chance at the dashboard or you're not maturing. You're not maturing. And unfortunately, a lot of people think, oh, because I never show anger, I'm mature. No, you might be a serial killer though. Wait, did I say that? I did. The divine created these human bodies this way on purpose. And I was sharing with somebody recently, when you die and you lose your body, you don't lose your emotions. I mean, I'm telling you, having a body, take it from a psychic and a medium, okay? Having a body is a cheat sheet to mastering emotional maturity. And you want emotional maturity before you leave your body. I promise you. I promise you. Okay? You want emotional maturity before you leave your body. See, when you have a body and you have energy and motion inside of it, you have something for the energy to ping off of. A little reflective point, right? A little reference point, like, oof, that happened there, so I think that has to do with this. When you're, I was gonna say when you're a ghost, when you don't have a body, when you're this ethereal being, regardless of which frequency you choose to associate with without a body, if you know what I mean, that energy and motion is going to keep zinging around through your, what we call aura, your soul star, okay? There just won't be any body for it to bounce off of as a reference point. So you're just be this swirling cloud of emotion, much like people are right now. Just saying. That's one of the reasons people look like the Walking Dead out here, okay? Because most people are walking around emotionally convoluted like they're dead. There's no clarity. So look, I'll tell you guys, of course, the reality is you could always hire somebody like me as a coach, right? I mean, you give me 12 months, I'll get your ass straightened out. Sure. And let's say that's just honestly not in your budget. Just not something you can do at this time. How the hell are you going to cultivate emotional maturity? Well, I'm glad you asked. You're going to start by allowing yourself to think about all the emotions you have already experienced and what they were like for you. When you experienced anger in the past, what was that like? Sadness, what was that like? And write it down. Write it down. The second practice I highly recommend is as you sit with your emotions, the ones that you have experienced, take time to think about emotions that you have not yet experienced. Know that life was a, wants to give you the full flavor. So you want to be present. Just because you haven't experienced something yet doesn't mean you're not going to. Next, I offer you, and this was very helpful for myself when I was doing this work, when I was unpacking my emotions layer by layer, and there are layers to emotions. That's the other thing. But I'm gonna let you explore that for yourself and discover that for yourself. I want you, particularly, to as you go to sit with an emotion, I want you to describe it as thoroughly as possible to yourself as you can. I want you to think if this emotion were a color, what color would it be? If it were a fabric, a texture, what texture would it be? If it were a shape, what shape would it be? If it were a taste, a smell, what would it be? Really give life to the emotion. When I did this, I discovered that sadness is a profound emotion for me. And I'm a very upbeat, happy go lucky, like let's turn up type of person. But when I sat and I allowed myself to experience all of my emotions, I fell in love with sadness. Sadness is like a gray velvet sofa, charcoal gray velvet sofa. And in sadness, I wear this light wool merino, this light gray merino wool sweater, and I have on my matching wool socks, and I have on the coziest corduroy pants, and I have a cup of tea, and I'm cozied up on that sofa, and that's sadness for me. And I find that very cozy and quiet. See, when you allow yourself to sit with your emotions as they are and really give them voice, they lose their kind of grip and power over you. You see what I mean? And I'll tell you, I've had people and, try to attack me in different ways. And one of the ways, especially other occultists will attack a practitioner like myself, is they'll seek to destabilize us emotionally. And that's another reason I'm out here trying to get you emotional maturity, emotional stability, because a lot of the times psychic attacks from occultists are going to come and destabilize your emotional center. They'll try to destabilize your root chakra, your solar plexus, and your sacral especially usually after they attack your crown and third eye, so you don't see the other attacks coming. But I don't know why I'm sharing that, but somebody I guess needs to know how the pattern works. But you want to, for myself, I was already so versed with my emotional spectrum and the depth of my emotions that there was no place that attack could take me where I couldn't get out of. I literally wore out my attackers because they would try to drag me down. I'd be like, oh, down here, oh, the basement. Oh, I love the basement. This is where I make art. And they're like, what the fuck with this bitch? you know, um, you can build not just emotional maturity, but stability, resilience, and strength that is very intimidating. And I think that's one of the reasons my aura has become so intimidating is because of my emotional maturity. People size me up very quickly, very quickly. I actually had a stranger. I went to I was out in town at a festival the other month, and a woman, just in the store, she was in the shop front, she says, your car is very grounded. And I giggled. I said, that's funny because I'm an Aries. And she goes, what? No, it's very Taurus over there. I said, yeah, 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 I get that. I've done a lot of work. It's my progress chart, and I've done a lot of work, right? Like everybody has a progress chart, but you don't really get to own that shit until you're in your North Node. I mean, so I went hard to put myself in my North Node energy. And absolutely, my energy is very Taurian, very Venusian right now. But of course, the fire and the heat is right there. The emotional maturity brings emotional stability. This is important because it allows you to be who you are regardless of who you're around. This is when you become the most authentic, solid version of yourself. Okay? And you know what we say, how you are in one place is how you are in every place. Well, the reason you're switching around is because you feel very, very vulnerable in different situations with different people. That's okay. Everybody feels that way. However, when you cultivate emotional maturity and you become emotionally stable, being vulnerable no longer seems so life threatening. It just occurs as something that you do to accomplish what you desire. Very different context around being vulnerable at that point. Okay. So I'm gonna pause this conversation here because of course we could keep going, but we're not going to. This is already a little bit longer, I think, uh, than what I normally do. But I really wanted you to have this piece on emotional maturity. We're going to talk more about it because it's so important. Very quickly, I'm going to dovetail that into discernment. I cannot stress it enough. I'm watching people be fooled so hardcore right now. And I've been around people who are very um sure of themselves that they are not being fooled, but they are. And again, I'll talk about being in the world, not of the world. Um, and unfortunately, I see a lot of people who are It's wild because there's this you guys already know what I'm gonna say, like this the divide, right? There's this um frequency that's pulling for people to just be distracted. And it's a very slick frequency. It's a very insidious frequency because again, people are being distracted while under the guise of um, doing their part, under the guise of learning. I think one of the biggest ways I'm seeing people be distracted right now is there's a lot of false light. You know, I'm just gonna call it the way I see it. It's like we're in the middle of this great awakening, but the false light has been so strategically implanted. Like right as people are waking up, they're being grabbed by false light. I mean, just snatched up by false light. And it's because the marketplace is saturated with false light. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And so for people who are waking up to find truth, to find something that's real, which is what they want, it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. You know, in other words, the matrix is masquerading as holy. I mean, that's just to put it bluntly. And so people who are waking up, really looking to connect with source, really looking to connect with their tribe, are being met with the matrix in cosplay. The matrix has a costume on, which is why so many people who are of the world are cosplaying. Do you understand? You guys notice that spirituality is a trend right now? That's because that's literally where we are in the evolution of humanity. That's what time it is. So the matrix has no choice but to respond. Do you get that? It can't hide it. It has to respond. And so it's responding by trying to hijack what is happening. Okay. So that's why there's so many, you guys, it's my podcast. I'm going to call it like I see it. There's so many yoga retreats. There's so many goddess retreats. There's so many retreats that cost, um, 5 figures, but everybody looks the exact same. And again, whatever, no transformation is occurring. A lot of emotions, yeah, but the emotions aren't maturing. The emotions are not being stabilized. The emotions aren't even being upgraded. So, this is where I remind you, hey, use your discernment. In the scriptures it says you'll know a tree by its fruit. Anybody can say, I'm an apple tree, I'm an apple tree, I'm an apple tree. But if you never see any apples, you know what that means, right? Use your discernment. Okay. Um, I really, emotional maturity. I mean, gosh, you guys, it's so everything right now. Because one of the challenges that you're facing now is being distracted and then being emotionally triggered. So I tell you, hey, I'm going to trigger you. I'm talking about triggers where they don't tell you on purpose, and you get triggered and you have an emotional response that may have an impact you're not ready for. I know that sounds like, wait, what? But trust me, at this point in time, one of the smartest ways you can conduct yourself is emotional maturity and stability. You would be wise to cultivate emotional maturity and stability as a way of being, such that that is how you are known. We live in an age where, thanks to, I mean, it's the Wild West out here, anyone with certain computer skills can make it look like somebody else has done something they haven't done. You want to have a track record. You want to be known as someone who is emotionally mature, emotionally stable. Doing that work will not only make sure that you're always present and so therefore in control of your vehicle, your vessel, you know what I'm saying? But you will also, again, you will leave it clear around you who you are, the type of behavior you commit. Again, 90% of people living in a chaotic swirl, walking around like zombies, like the living dead. If someone were to make up, even if it were a lie, that one of them did something, how could they? I mean, they're walking around like they don't know. They don't even know what the hell they did last summer, you know? So that's how I'm going to leave it with you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, thank you for rocking with me. I love you so bad. I know you love me too. Until next time, trust your path, your process, and your purpose. Peace.